Hi everyone, this is the second video in the series of integrations. In my previous video, I've shown you how we can send data from third-party application to ServiceNow instance using post request, basic auth, and the table API of ServiceNow. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the same using scripted REST APIs. So let me just navigate directly to the scripted REST API, and I'm going to create a new one over here. The name of my scripted REST API is demo scripted, and I'm going to save this record, and let's add a new resource over here. Request, I'm going to change it to post, and this is the area where my script needs to fit in. So let's get started. First of all, I am going to get the request body from the request object. Now request data object over here contains the payload data which is coming from the third party application. In my case, that application would be Postman. And if the payload contains data for multiple records, then it would be an instance of an array. And if it contains only data for a single record, then it will be simply an object. So if my request data is an instance of array, then I'm going to process those records over here. If not, then here. So whatever the data is coming, let me create a function in a script include, and I am going to save the data in my table using import set. I don't want to flood this script area part using a big script. That's why I am using a script include. So the name of my script include is this, which I generally use for any of my demos. Insert incident data is the name of my function, and then I'm going to pass the request data object over here. So my scripted REST API part is almost complete. I just need to code this function so that I am able to insert the data into my incident record. So if you have not already watched my previous video where I have demonstrated the inbound integration using table API, I created a staging table, and I am going to import the records in the staging table instead of directly importing it into my incident table, and that's the recommended practice as well. So here is my request data object. Now the name of my staging table is u underscore test underscore inc underscore integration. I am going to initialize this. Let's say I am receiving short description and description. So let me check the exact name in the backend. So this is my short description field, and this is the request data. Let's assume the name of my field is short underscore description in the payload. Now again, I'm going to go back for description. This is the name of my description field in the payload. I mean, all these are assumptions until and unless I jump to Postman and set the actual field values over there along with the field names. So the let's say next one is impact. And then urgency. And then I am going to call dot insert function. So now the data which is incoming will be imported in my staging table, and using a transform map it will be saved in my incident table as well. So let us take a look at the transform map as well then. Meanwhile this is getting saved. This is the same transform map which we created for the table API demo. So I have the field map for description, short description, impact, urgency. I think that is what is required for now. Now I am going to jump back to my scripted REST API. And I'm going to copy this URL and paste it to my Postman. And I'm going to update the URL in my Postman. Moving double slash, I'm using the authorization as basic auth, using the same user which we created in the last video. Okay, and this is the sample payload which I have already demonstrated using, but now let's update it. Impact is 1, urgency is 2. Now let's see how things turn out. I'm going to click on send. Status here is 200. Okay, now let's go back to the ServiceNow instance, and I am going to check in the incident table if a new incident is created. So this is the same short description and description which I have given in my Postman tool, which in your case you need to assume it in a way that the request is being sent by a third party application. So this is how we can create a ticket via third party tool and using scripted REST APIs in ServiceNow. Now let's add a catch to it. So I'm going to consider a couple of other scenarios as part of this same demo so that we have a clear picture of how things are working. Now this was the case when only data for a single record was sent. Now consider a scenario where data for multiple records is being sent. Then how we are going to process the same. So if things are not already clear, it will be clear in a second. And this is the data for the first incident. This is for the second one. So when I send this data, it should be creating two incidents in ServiceNow instance, which will not happen now because when I click on send, the script to REST API will be called. It will enter into this if condition because it is an instance of an array, but it will not work because I don't have anything over here. I simply did not write any code in this particular if condition. There is no hard and fast tool as such to insert multiple incidents. Let me simply go to the Postman and try clicking on send just to make sure things are not working as expected. If I refresh the list, this incident is still the first one in the list, and let us just simply call it out here. So I am going to for request in request data. I'm going to call this particular function again and again. That's it. Let's see if this works out, or we will have to maybe take some other route back to Postman. Click on send. It says 200. Okay, again. Back to incident list. Something is created, but without a description and short description. Created by the same user. Let's try to find out a reason for the same. Before checking anything in the logs or debugging anything, let me try by simply declaring this request. So request is the name of the out of the box object, so we cannot use the same name. So I'm going to declare it as request object, and let's save this and we'll try it one more time. Send. Data is sent now. I am going back to the incident list. All right. Looks like we missed something. Did not take the request in here. So now it is updated. I will click on send again. Minor mistakes. Now we are again missing one more thing. I mean, these are the steps we need to follow when we are writing a particular script, and we need to be careful about it. Otherwise, it would take more time. So now let's try to run through the script why it is not working. When I say variable x in an array variable with variables x, y, z, this signifies the position of the element in the array. So in this case, I am simply passing the position, not the object at that position. So to pass the object at that particular position, I need to pass this object along with the parameters right here. Okay, so consider it as, let's say there is a array named car, and this gives me the first position, and this gives me the second position, the element at the second position. So what earlier we were doing was I was simply passing this particular element position value either 0 or 1. So it's obvious that it won't work. However, it was creating an empty incident without any details because our script was getting called anyway. Now let's save this and see if my understanding of this particular script was right or not. So I'm going to go back to this application. I will click on send again. And let's reload the list. See, both the incidents are created now. First one with the criticality or the priority of 1, and the second one with priority of moderate, and this contains 1, this contains 2 in the short description and description. So far I have taken into account two use cases. First one is when I was sending the data to my ServiceNow instance for only one single record, and the second use case was when I was taking into account that the data for multiple incident records is being sent to my ServiceNow instance. Now let's just add another use case to it where I don't want any duplicate incidents to be created. Now if I'm going to click on send button again, it will again insert couple of incidents into the system. Let's see. So this is creating duplicate tickets in the system, though the incident number is different. So how can we make sure that this does not happen? For that, I am going to include the correlation ID field. So I'm going to navigate back to my web service. And now I have added this correlation ID to my web service. Okay, let's click on update. Continue. So the correlation ID is successfully added to my web service or to my import set table. Now let's go back to the transform map which was created and map this correlation ID field. My source field is correlation ID and my target field on the incident table as well is correlation ID, and I'm going to mark this field as collace. Let's save this mapping for the correlation ID field, and I am also going to add another field to the payload request which is being sent from Postman, which is correlation ID. So let's say the correlation ID for the first incident data is INC 0123, and in the same way let's make it 001 0002. Okay, as of now there will be no effect because I'm not saving this field value. So now let us navigate back to our scripted REST API and see where this is happening. So this is happening in this function which is there in my script include, and here is my script include. So let's save correlation ID as well. Let's save it. Okay, so this code is saved now, and let's go back to our transform map. So in my transform map, I can see in the list that correlation ID is the collace field and everything else is not. If you're not already aware what collace field is all about, then it marks the uniqueness of the data. So if the same incident number is being sent by the third party application multiple times, it is only going to update the existing record. It will not create a new record. This is how it works. So I've marked the collace added in the function. There's no need to update my scripted REST API for now. And let me trigger a request. Just to identify, I'm changing it to 3 and 4. in the short description, click on send. Navigate back to the incident list, refresh it. So these are the incidents which are created now, and let's see if correlation ID is present. Yes, it is. Now let us trigger the same request again without changing the correlation IDs. If I click on send, let's refresh the list. You can observe that the tickets are not created now because I am using the correlation ID functionality. Usually in practical cases, when you're working on any integration, let's say there's an integration between Pega and ServiceNow. So when there's a ticket created in Pega, something should be created in ServiceNow as well. So Pega request should include correlation ID, which means the ticket number or any unique identifier at Pega end, so that same ticket is not created multiple times even when an update happens on the ticket at the Pega end. Now if I change the correlation ID here, see, and this one is 4. If I click on send, it should be able to create 2 more incidents in that particular list. Let's refresh it. So I can see 3434 twice, and if I go to correlation ID 1, 2, 3, 4, so this time 2 incidents are created, which was not the case earlier because incident number for the correlation ID was same. So this was about the fact that a new incident will not be created, but if I use the same correlation IDs, will it update the existing incident? So I am changing the short description to this just to verify whether an update works. Send. And the ticket number for 3 and 4 is 389 and 390. Let me refresh the list and you can observe the short description changes. Ticket number remains the same, but the short description changes. The whole short description is not taken into account, probably due to the limitations that it cannot be more than a particular value of about, let's say, 40 characters. So it looks fine in the short description field, probably then, yeah, since my staging table is having a limit of 40 characters, that is why it did not include anything over that. But this is how it works. This is how we can use scripted REST API to create incident records or records in any other table, not necessarily an incident record, but this is how scripted REST API works. If you want to take a look at the user setup, you might want to watch my previous video because user setup is most important in such cases. We don't give admin roles to the functional accounts which are created specifically for integrations. So that's pretty much it, and don't forget to mark your user as the web service access only until and unless your user is supposed to do a lot of other things in the system, but that also invite licensing implications if it is only web service access only and the user is just loading some data in the system. There, as per my understanding, are no licensing implications. So Just make sure you're following the best practices and using the right roles for your user. That's it. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.